Hey everyone, Zach Mason here. Welcome to my channel. This video is an amplified interpretation of the Dana Coverstone October Dream. Now, you say, what in the world is this? How is this relevant to me? Well, on this channel, we talk about prophecy, current events, God's Word, and we're especially interested in seeing how biblical prophecy, the book of Revelation specifically, and news, current events, are lining up. And to help us do that, we have a big pool of other data, which is dreams and visions. Hundreds of thousands of Christians really have been having dreams, special dreams that we would call prophetic, especially since they're all seeing very similar things. The things they're seeing line up with the book of Revelation. The details all match. And I have personally watched a lot of the things that has been seen come true already. So we're growing in our confidence in these dreams, that they are a roadmap that can help us navigate the world we're moving into. And if you're not aware that big things are happening and the United States is in danger as well as much of the world, then I guess you've been tuned out from the news and even your friends and family and what's going on with everybody. But we are in concerning times, and but I have specifically focused on the dreams that one particular pastor, a pastor named Dana Coverstone, has been having, because I have a lot of confidence that his dreams are from God, for sure. I've seen some of the things, and I'm seeing things that he saw coming true. And I see the fruit of the Spirit in him, humility, etc. I am posting a link in the description of this video to another video where I go in depth as to why I believe his dreams are from God. That said, his dreams are very symbolic, but not so symbolic you can't understand what they're talking about, as I think we'll see. So I'm going to jump right in. This is the October dream. I think this is one of the more important of his dreams because it's associated with timelines and time frame, and talks about current events very clearly in ways that we should be able to figure out. However, this is also one of the dreams that some have used to discredit him because they didn't see some of these things happening when he first had it. We're going to talk a little more about why that is wrong. But first, watch this brief clip. Here he talks about, because this October dream was probably I think it was the fourth dream he posted online. The first one, the big one that everybody saw, 400 million people saw this one, was called the calendar dream. And this was just, before that, he was just the pastor of a 80-person church in Kentucky. No one knew his name. And yet God took this dream he posted and put it in front of the whole world. We call that one the calendar dream. I already did an interpretation of that on this channel. Next, he had two others that he posted that were kind of not as significant. I've done the September dream, which is an important one actually, but it wasn't controversial. But by this October dream, watch this intro. Watch how he introduces it, and look at the hurt, the weakness, the defeat in his face as he's reporting this, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Hey, this is Pastor Dana, and I had a dream on Monday night, August 10th, and I haven't said a lot about it because I know when I share this, it's going to make some people mad. And my life's not been the same since I posted that first dream. I never asked for this. I never asked for God to show me anything. I was doing a series on dreams and visions. I thought maybe I'll get some dreams, maybe some others will get some dreams. But it's been different. It's been a lot different. There's been some concerns from my family because of the dreams I posted. People showing up at my door who then get arrested in my community for being violent. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages. I'm not doing this for notoriety. I'm not getting paid to do this. I had a dream. I simply had a dream. And I'm sharing them because there are things that God, I believe, is showing me that the country needs to see. So I'm just going to share this, and you can do with it what you want. I'm not asking God to give me any more. I've not prayed God to give me another dream since I had the first one. They keep coming. And
so that right there is one of the main reasons why I believe these dreams are from God. Because in that clip, you see, he doesn't want to be sharing these dreams. He wasn't looking for fame. He seems very sincerely, when he says he wasn't looking for fame or money, and he's not getting famous or getting money out of this, he's believable, right? He's believable. So if he's posting this, you could tell he almost doesn't want to be posting this, but he feels compelled to. Why? Because he had the dream. He had a dream. He feels that it's prophetic. He feels that it's a warning, and there is a Christ figure at the end speaking, and he's feeling like, even though it's destroying his life, the threats he's getting, the criticisms, the skepticism, the attacks, his own family's probably beating him up over it. His church members may be beating him up. Who knows who all was going after him. But he was feeling beaten down, and yet still felt compelled to share, in spite of the fact he thought it would bring him more attacks. And that is a sign that he's just trying to be faithful, right? So that adds a lot of credibility. And whatever you want to think about whether or not this dream was fulfilled or should have already been fulfilled, it's hard to deny that intro in his sincerity. I can't deny it. So perhaps any skepticism or any problems we feel like there are in the fulfillment of this dream are just because we are not the best of interpreters. We're trying, but maybe we got it wrong before, and maybe we need to think again, and maybe we're going to see something. I think we're going to start seeing stuff lining up now. But let's go ahead and watch the first part of the dream as he reported it.
so I dreamt I was in the month of October. I saw the month of October as a calendar and was waving like it was being blown by a strong wind, not a fitful wind, not violent, just kind of a fitful wind, you know. And I saw a finger appear, and it pointed to the second week of October, and it dragged the finger through the third week of the month. So it covered second and third week of October.
Okay, so he saw a calendar page, the month of October. Notice that he did not say the year. Okay, he did not say the year. That doesn't mean, now he had this dream in the fall or August-ish of 2020. So most people interpret this to be October 2020. Now in his first calendar dream, he saw it was a 2020 calendar, and he saw all of the months go through. He saw March and June and etc., September and November, and there was a hand of God interacting with those months and emphasizing them. And I explained in a different video that the hand tapped, in that first dream, the hand tapped the month of March 3 times, June 3 times, September 3 times, and underlined November 3 times before there was a fist punch in the month of November. So, and then after that dream, he had this October dream, and he had a September dream, he had another November dream, and he had a December, January dream. And so naturally, a lot of us thought he was seeing more detail about those specific months in 2020. However, it does not have to be interpreted that way for the following reason. One, he didn't say in the calendar dream he saw the year associated with the calendar. In this dream, he doesn't say what year. He just saw October. And maybe the dates weren't actually corresponding to the right days of the week with those dates like you would see for 2020. Maybe he was seeing 2022. Or maybe it was 2020. I'm going to propose both theories. However, what we have learned from the calendar dream is that most likely the 3 taps on March, the 3 taps on June, the 3 taps on September, and the underlined number 3 times meant 3 Marches, 3 Junes, 3 Septembers, 3 Novembers. So the fist punch then would probably correspond to this coming November in 2022, not the Biden-Trump election November. And I think we can see some bad things on the horizon for that one. And that is why I'm thinking that this may be corresponding more to 2022. This might be, he may have seen this dream about October 2022 and not 2020. I remember in October 2020, I was trying to, I was talking with friends about this. We're analyzing, we were kind of searching for theories and trying to come up with hypotheses of, oh, maybe this will happen, and that's how this would get fulfilled. But we didn't see it happening so clearly, and so it made us reevaluate. But as I've said before, the template for his dreams with the calendar seemed to be that the hand is emphasizing certain dates. And those dates is telling us, are important. But the events that are seen after that don't have to be limited to that month or to those days. It's just telling us those dates are significant, and then these things are going to be happening that could and probably will play out over a lot of time. We'll see. However, it is also possible that what he saw here is going to correspond to October of this year, and we will find out. But let me interpret here and talk about it. So he saw the month being blown by a fitful wind. Okay, fitful wind. What does this mean? It means pre-storm. Pre-storm. Remember, the last video, or one of the last videos I just did, was the September dream, and in it, it was a period of preparation. The church was praying hard, and it was because bad things were coming. So October, we're seeing a fitful wind. That's like the kind of wind you get right before a storm, where you see the trees whipping around. God, this is one of the themes, the 12 themes that so many Christians have been seeing in vivid dreams, is a storm, a coming storm. That's a very common one. If maybe you have had a dream about a storm. If so, storms are symbols of judgment, of coming judgment. And indeed, that is what God is showing us with these dreams about storms, that judgment is coming. So October is pre-judgment, pre-storm. Now, he saw God's finger was dragged across the second and third weeks of October. He didn't say which date, he just said the second and third weeks of October. Now, originally, and I still believe this is true, is the second and third weeks of October in 2020 were the nomination hearings for Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. And those were very contentious, and they were right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on Rosh Hashanah in September. Okay. So I believed that was highlighting those weeks are important because she's going to get nominated to the Supreme Court. Why was that important? Because Roe v. Wade is now being overturned. And that would not have happened if Amy Coney Barrett had not been nominated. However, there is another possibility. There's a possibility that this October, which would be October 9th through the 15th and October 16th through the 22nd, those are the second and third weeks of October this year. Something big could be happening this October that we haven't seen yet. If not, then it definitely was Amy Coney Barrett's hearings only. But there could also be something coming this October in those weeks. And I noticed that the second week of October, 9th through the 15th, is the Feast of Tabernacles on the Jewish calendar. And God, a lot of times things happen prophetically on important dates in the Jewish calendar. So it could be something's coming then. And there are some Jewish holy days in the first part of the third week as well. So time will tell. Now, which one? It could actually be both. How is that possible? Well, God gives words about the future to his prophets a lot of times that have multiple fulfillments. The way it was explained to me in seminary is that it's like a prophet is seeing the top of a mountain, but he's actually seen the top of multiple mountains. And so they're separated by wide valleys between them, but he thinks he's seeing just one mountaintop, but he's actually seeing multiple mountaintops. That's kind of the way God does things very concisely, and he can have multiple fulfillments of the same prophecy. So that's a biblical principle. Okay, now let's go ahead and watch this next section.
And then it pointed October 31st, and it held the position. It just kind of tapped it and held it.
Okay, the finger pointed at October 31st and held it. Held the position, tapped it and held it. Touched it. That means that date is important. What happened in October 31st of 2020? Well, it wasn't obvious to people who weren't searching for it, but I noticed that there was a clear statement from the voting machine company Dominion that they had run an update on their voting machines against the will of all of the voting precincts that they serviced. These voting precincts didn't ask for it or know it was happening, but they updated their voting machines with new algorithms on October 31st of 2020. That was 3-4 days before the Trump-Biden election. And it has been alleged that the Dominion voting machines were instrumental in flipping votes. So this update would have been involved in that, in flipping it. So I had believed that was the event of October 31st. But there could be one coming this year, okay, as well. Again, it could be multiple fulfillments again. But the finger's showing us that something is important about that date. And my personal dream that I had, and I reported on this channel a few videos ago, about a newspaper headline I saw where there was a huge slave market somewhere in Asia. It specifically said white slave market. Some people are focused on the race. I don't care what race is. Slavery is always bad for anybody. We don't want slavery. But that isn't what I want to focus on here. The date that I saw in that dream, and it was a very unusual dream where I saw like a headline. And the date was 11/1/2022, November 1st, 2022, which would be a newspaper headline the day after October 31st. I don't know what that means, but it is significant to me that I saw unexpectedly, completely unexpectedly, this thing that said November 1st. I have no idea what's going to happen that day or what could happen that day. I don't know. That's just what I saw. And then we have him seeing this, and I just today, as I was preparing for this video, connected the dots. Okay, I was reading this, and all of a sudden, I guess God reminded me of the November 1st date He'd shown me. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it is. And if nothing happens that day, then it'll just mean we misunderstood something. Okay, but there's something definitely supernatural being communicated here. Anyways, we will see what happens this October on those dates. It'll be interesting to wait and watch for it. But let's go ahead and watch this next part.
The first thing I saw was a rock. It came flying out of the sky and it landed in a large pond. And the ripples started off small, but then they became like vicious waves. Like when a wind begins to blow stronger and the ripples start to go further out.
Okay, that is the most cryptic part of this dream that is more challenging to understand. The other things are pretty straightforward. But a rock comes flying out of the sky and lands in a large pond. What this reminds me of is, the vision of Daniel when the rock not hewn out by human hands came down, or the mountain came down and destroyed the statue that represented the world empires, the world systems. It reminds me of that, especially since it came flying out of the sky, okay, and landed in a large pond. The sky is a symbol for God the Father in nature. The sky is His symbol for Himself. So that confirms to me that this is something He is sending to the earth. Now you may say, well, what isn't this the asteroid from the trumpets, the first 4 trumpets of the book of Revelation? And I would argue, no, I don't believe it is, and here's why. He didn't see it like a comet or an asteroid. He didn't see it burning with fire. He just saw a rock. Okay, he didn't describe fire. John in the book of Revelation described fire. He also says it landed in a large pond. In the book of Revelation, there's 2 possible comets or asteroids that come out of space and hit the earth. One, it says, hits the land. It hits the greenery, the trees, the grass, etc. The other hits the oceans. Neither of those is a large pond. The third reason I don't think that it is the asteroid of Revelation is because he says the ripples started off small and then became vicious waves. Okay, now that's not matching the laws of physics. And if he'd seen the actual asteroid coming down, he would have seen an immediate tsunami. Okay, not what he saw. So this is kind of backwards from the way the laws of physics work, where you start small waves and then become bigger and bigger and bigger. That's not natural. That tells me this is a supernatural symbolic representation. The rock is either the person of Jesus Christ or a major truth, because rocks, he is represented by a boulder, like the rock of our salvation, but rocks can also be symbolic of truths, of major truths that need to be understood. In this case, this is not representing the second coming, okay, or the rapture. Definitely not the rapture, because this rock hits the earth, and in the rapture, Jesus doesn't touch the earth. He calls us up to him in the clouds. Not the second coming, because second coming happens after all of this. So this is probably just purely symbolic, and most likely means that it's related to exposure of truth, or is impacting the earth. So God himself is putting his finger down to do something, to cause ripples. And the ripples that God is causing in the nations, in the people, among the people, is, and in fact, this pond probably represents the United States, not all of the peoples of the earth, because it's a pond. It's not the ocean. The oceans represent all the nations, so a pond would be more localized, and it's probably the United States. But it means he is interfering. He's doing something that's going to cause, at first, small ripples, and then they're going to get big. Like whatever it is he exposes, whatever truth he brings, has a huge impact. Not immediately, but builds pretty quick, is what it would seem to be saying. Let's go ahead and watch more of the dream.
I saw federally elected officials, faces I recognize. I saw specific state governors. I saw agency leaders. And I saw just radicals, like the people you'd see in Portland or Seattle or Minneapolis. But they had wicks coming out of their head, almost like a firecracker wick, like a firework wick. And the second week of October is when I saw simultaneously all those wicks coming out of the heads were lit on fire. Federal officials had heads that were the shape of like an old M80. Those folks from the 70s and 80s remember those. The governors had heads shaped like the Black Cat firecrackers, the 1.5, 2-inch firecrackers. Everybody else had the smaller, like ladyfinger style firecracker fireworks. And these people are talking, and they're starting to get animated. They're yelling, they're screaming. The facial images went from normal and calm to red face, jumping to an absolute out of your mind primal scream. Everybody's head blew up at the same time. These people were still alive, but their heads had blown up. And this resulted in sparks and debris flying all over the area where they were standing, and it started fires around them.
What he saw. Now, when Dana Coverstone says that he saw federally elected officials, he means members of Congress, federally elected officials. He doesn't mean appointed, he doesn't mean state level. He's talking about congressmen, representatives of the House of Representatives, and senators of the Senate. That's what he's talking about. So he's talking about congressmen, senators, and then he says governors and agency leaders, department heads, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, etc., and radicals. So he saw 4 categories. He said they had wicks coming out of their heads like firecrackers. He says that the federally elected officials had heads like big, like M80s, explosive fireworks. The governors were like black cat firecrackers, and everyone else, like the radicals and even apparently agency heads, have ladyfinger size firecrackers, so smaller. So the sizes seem to correspond to their power, to their ability to spark a conflict or spark fires or explode. So federally elected officials have a big footprint. They have power. So if when their heads explode, it's a bigger deal. The radicals, not so important. They may be passionate, but they don't have actual power or a lot of people following them. However, if you get enough ladyfinger firecrackers, it becomes like an M80, right? So now he said that these wicks got lit the second week of October. Okay. That seems to correspond to tie what he's seen to the calendar, back to the calendar he saw, and the finger hovering over the second and third weeks. And that would support the idea that this wasn't just done in 2020, but this may be 2022. Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen, I believe. And he said their faces change from normal to an out-of-your-mind primal scream. So he watches as the wicks are burning down, their faces are getting redder and redder. They're yelling, they're screaming until, unbelievable anger. What could it be? What could it be? I don't know. I don't think any of us are really going to know until it happens. This is going to be unexpected, but I can take some guesses about the nature of it. One is I had one of the guys in my Bible study that I lead, the Revelation study I lead, had a dream where he saw Joe Biden sitting in a stadium with a bunch of other politicians, and Biden was asleep. And then he said that Biden did something that made everybody really mad. That's the way he described it. But he couldn't remember exactly what it was Biden did. And then a voice behind him said, "It is coming, and you are not prepared." And he was like, "What is coming?" And the voice repeated, "It is coming, and you are not prepared." And one of the managers of one of my businesses, my bookstore, also told me, she said she had a dream. And I said, "What was your dream?" And she said, "It was really a dream." She said it was more of a voice, and the voice said, "It is coming." And she had not heard this other gentleman, didn't know about his dream. So, it is coming. What it is, I don't know. But I suspect that that the voice was talking about is whatever happens in the second week of October. I believe that is the thing. Okay. And I can also predict that it's going to be something lawless done by a certain political party that tends to do lawless things, shockingly lawless things. And I have a feeling that something's going to be done that is so outside what is acceptable to general common sense and decency. And then that same political party, read between the lines, will justify it. Not only will they not condemn whatever's happened, as they should, I imagine, based on the reaction of the other side, they will support it. They will come up with twisted justifications, legitimizations of this thing, the way they do with so many other things, but this one's going to be a big one. And I think at that point, the Republicans will have had enough, and they will be furious in response. And that is the source of the anger. So I'm predicting, based on my knowledge of how our political system works and how the parties, their characteristics, etc., I'm making that guess. Okay, I'm not saying it as a prophet. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm expecting. Sparks and debris flew, so their heads blew up, right? Everybody's heads blew up at the same time. It says they were still alive, but their heads had blown up, right? Now, and then sparks and debris flew and started fires around them. So they're starting fires of war, frankly, to be clear. Fires of war, fires of civil war. They're sparking civil war, which is coming. It's significant. Their heads blew up. I mean, that's such a great image that God has used. He said they're still alive, but their heads blew up. It means they've lost their minds. Okay? They're alive, but they've lost their minds. All of them. Both sides. Both sides. Go watch my interpretation of the Lincoln Dream, and you'll see more of a detailed process of what they do after they lose their minds, and as far as our political leaders go. But this happens when you reach a certain level of stress. I learned this a couple years ago, that when your brain detects a certain level of stress hormones, it goes into a physiological, not a psychological state, but a physiological state. There's a physical change to your brain where it decides you're in danger, and it puts you in fight, flight, or freeze mode, where you can't do anything. You become completely irrational and unable to do anything that won't make you feel safe. And when you're irrational, you've lost your mind. You've lost your head. You no longer do things that are reasonable. You instead start fires. You start being incendiary in ways you normally wouldn't be, because you're no longer in your right mind. Okay? So whatever this is, it's going to create just the stress of what's happening, I think, is causing this kind of a reaction. We're already seeing a lot of elevated stress levels around us now. Okay, let's go ahead and watch the next step.
And then I saw the protests that were taking place, that were still taking place in October. They went up another notch, because the bystanders who were part of the protests and that were there, that were not being very, very violent and not really getting us involved, the protesters basically said, if you're not doing that, you're not one of us. And they began to assault those protesters who were not deemed as violent or as vicious as they should be. And I saw some of those protesters left on the side of the road, almost like they were dead. They'd been beaten because they weren't protesting like the other ones were. They weren't doing all those things that they should have done.
All right, the protests went up a notch. We've seen that several times, but I think that you're already seeing some violent acts happening in this country, and it's heartbreaking. And more, I believe, is coming. I believe it's going to get worse, and I believe going to this fall, it's going to get bad, especially in October, especially before the midterm elections, and especially with whatever's going to happen in those weeks in October. But specifically, it says unviolent protesters got beaten up by violent ones for not participating viciously enough. So they're forming a violent cult, a gang. You're not going to attack people the way we are. We're going to beat the turd out of you. Okay. Some were left on the side of the road, almost like they were dead, he said. That's key. I think there may be something there that I hadn't seen initially, and maybe a lot of people haven't seen this. But left on the side of the road, almost like they were dead. Reminds me of the Samaritan, the parable of the Good Samaritan. And just a thought came to me that what if this is representing a final redemptive effort by God for some of these people? Because, why wouldn't you be violent? Okay, if you're a protester, if you're Antifa, if you're out there with Black Lives Matter, and they're doing violence, and they're burning buildings, and they're hitting people with bricks in the head, if they're stabbing or shooting people, if they're trying to attack people and things, and just getting all around just terrible in their actions, and you're with them, why wouldn't you join in? Now, I know it sounds like a weird question. You say, well, of course I would. Well, of course you watching this wouldn't join in. But if you're not you, if you're one of these if you're with violent protesters, why wouldn't you get violent? Why would you resist the violence so much that you would get to a point, you would resist it so much that they would beat you up and you would, that's the end result. I mean, most people who are not tending to get violent, not wanting to get violent, they're pressured. They're saying, look, if you don't do this violence with us, we're going to hurt you. They'll get violent too, right? Most people in that situation would. So, but there's this subcategory that says, no matter what you do to me, I'm not going to get violent. What drives that? A good heart, basically. A heart that isn't really wanting lawlessness or to hurt people. These are the protesters that truly have gone out with Black Lives Matter, etc., because they thought it was the right thing to do, because they thought it was moral, because they thought they were defending people from hate. There is a group of people out there with them that are like that. And ultimately, the reason is because they've got a heart that would be oriented towards God, that wants God, and they want good things. And they're just confused, and they think that these protests are good. They think that they're helping people and stopping hate. But when they see violence, they're not joining in because they can't, their heart won't let them. Their spirit is resisting. They don't want to, they're there not to stop hurt, to stop hate. They're seeing hate and hurt, and they're not wanting to join in, and they're willing to be beat up instead of doing it. So perhaps this is a redemptive moment for them, because it says they were left on the side of the road almost like they were dead. Almost like they were dead. So they're not dead. They're not dead. Almost like they were dead. Maybe this means there's going to be a resurrection of these people. These people are having their eyes opened and will see the light and maybe come back to Christ and realize that they've been deceived. That would be my hope. Anyways, so maybe we should be praying for these protesters harder than we've been praying for them, that God would move in their hearts. So anyway, here we go. Next part.
I saw the elderly people, and this is what got me. I saw elderly people being attacked. It was an attack on older Americans, the people that hold the Constitution dear, the flag dear, the people that have the common sense values, commitment to faith and biblical principles. I even saw people trying to get into nursing homes and nursing facilities to attack older people. That's what I saw in the dream.
Okay, so these elderly people being attacked. He says, there's something interesting. He says that why were they being attacked? He points it out. He says they were being attacked because they're people who hold the Constitution dear, the flag dear, common sense values, and commitment to faith and biblical principles. Now, it's kind of backwards, the order here, but the reason he's stating is that is basically because we have a whole generation that is becoming anti-Christian socialist revolutionaries. We really have a lot of Americans that is how they would almost define themselves, as what they feel. And the older generation is a symbol or evidence of people that used to believe the wrong way. And the idea is young people have it right. And if we can get rid of these elderly people, these people that vote wrong, that think wrong, that hold these things so dear, then we can change the country because they won't be around to resist this anymore. And they certainly don't hold the people attacking people for having biblical principles don't have biblical principles themselves. So killing them or maiming them or hurting them to get them out of the way, well, that's okay if you're a socialist revolutionary. Because they don't value the Bible, they don't value the Constitution, they don't hold those values. But I do want to say that the order struck me as he said it. He said, these are people who hold the Constitution dear, the flag dear, common sense values, and commitment to faith and biblical principles. the order is backwards of how it should be. Yet he's accurately describing former generations, right? Americans at large would call themselves Christian and go to church and say, yes, I'm committed to the Christian faith and to the Bible, and I believe those are God's word, etc. But their order of commitments are backwards. This is really one of the major problems with American Christianity specifically. The Constitution is revered as more powerful, as more binding, as more foundational to our society than the Bible. That's what recent conservative generations have had in their hearts and minds, is that's the order. And it's not what the founding fathers had as their order. They said that they modeled the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence with the Bible as its foundation. They said they believed the Bible was the foundation of our government and our people and the laws and the Constitution, that without it, none of it survives. The founding fathers didn't put these things in that order. They all valued everything, these same values, but they had a different order. It should be Bible first, Constitution second, right? And having it in the wrong order is what got us to the problem we're in now with abortion. Because the enemy used this flaw in our value system to destroy us. Because Roe v. Wade is what allowed abortion to be legal in this country. And so many Americans were opposed to it because of our commitment to the Christian faith and biblical principles. However, as a country, culturally, we felt that the Constitution, and we'd been taught that the Constitution wasn't based in the Bible, that the Bible wasn't equally as important, that we could be Americans in America without it, that people didn't really have to adhere to it, that the Constitution almost trumped the Bible and biblical values and God's values, and that because these Supreme Court justices had decided this, God's law didn't trump that. And somehow the U.S. Constitution trumped God's law. And they didn't fight for it. They didn't push for it. They didn't go crazy enough. And abortion remained the law of the land. Okay, if the order had been correct, and we said, no, God's law and the Bible are first, they're foundational, the Constitution is subservient to that, then we would not have abortion today. And we would not be on the path we're on. So, in a sense, this generation, the generation that's in nursing homes now, was 30 and 40 years old in 1973 when Roe v. Wade happened. So as painful as this will be to watch, it's almost a judgment of sorts on both sides. And it's very, very sad. It's heartbreaking. And we see that the enemy, and there's another element too, which is it's just the enemy inspiring people to break the fifth commandment, to attack your elders. One of God's principles is to respect your elders. And so the enemy inspires people to break that. Which is what he sees happening here at some point in the United States, with people even breaking into nursing home facilities to hurt elderly people. Very strange. I've done some compilations here where I've shown some of the violence where people are attacking elderly people. It's a very strange phenomenon, but it's enemy inspired. It's just bad, but and sad. Anyways, let's go ahead and watch the next part.
And then I saw a $100 bill, a big $100 bill about the size of a flag. It was hanging like a flag on a pole, and it was burning from one corner. And it was being lowered, like at the end of the day. And I saw people with their hands over their hearts, and they were crying because their god of money was just being lowered. It had lost its value. And it burned until there was about a third of it left. It was a celebration. People were celebrating. While some Americans were just devastated and torn up by what they saw happening, there were people celebrating that the dollar had died. It was dying, the value of the American dollar. There was someone even playing taps in the background.
Okay, he saw a huge $100 bill flying like a flag. That's interesting. Okay, God's symbolism, the way he uses symbols is incredible. Another reason I know Coverstone didn't invent these dreams is a $100 bill, all right, and it is hanging like a flag. It's huge like a flag, and we see people with their hands over their heart on it. So it's the flag. It's replaced our flag, and we're saluting. We're pledging allegiance to this because this is one of the great sins of America. We have exchanged the God of the Bible for the God of money as a people. You and I haven't. Most of you watching this haven't. Some of you might. I don't know. But most of us watching, and I know myself, I worship God. I don't want to worship money. But a lot of America has exchanged gods, and they do worship money. So because of that, he is judging our money. Okay, God's a jealous God. Every judgment that he's bringing corresponds exactly to a sin we've engaged in, right? So we have worshipped our economy. We've worshipped our dollar, and he is going to destroy it to take that God away from us. This is like the plagues of Egypt, okay? Every plague of Egypt was designed to attack a different Egyptian god. And in this case, the first one is he's attacking our God of money. He's going to destroy that. Later, when we're talking have food shortages, he's attacking the materialism in us, okay, etc. And our dependence on our own power and our ability to do things rather than depending on him for his provision. The Civil War, we're going to force the division of Israel. And so he's going to divide us. We divide Israel, and so he's going to divide us. Also, we pride ourselves on being a lawful country, a law-abiding country, a nation of laws, a peaceful country, one that is always, we've loved our Constitution, we've idolized our Constitution almost. And we've prided ourselves and bragged about how we have such peaceful transitions of power in this country. Well, that bragging's about to end, okay? Because he's going to take away our Constitution. He's going to say, you thought this document is what held you together and made you great, and it was me. He's going to say, it's God, not the Constitution. He could make us great with another document, if we were obedient to him and following him. We're going to lose electricity at some point with the EMP. Why? Because we're addicted to social media, because we brag on there, we post things to make ourselves look good. We're fake. We use them as a crutch. We're addicted to them. We spend more time on them, on social media and our phones, than we do with God, with our family, with our friends, with anything productive. So he's going to remove that. We've misused electricity. We've become addicted to pornography as well, and many other, and our entertainment. We've worshipped Hollywood and allowed them to fill our minds and our hearts with filth for so many years, and didn't want to turn it off so we wouldn't be weird. And so he's going to take away electricity as a judgment on that. The invasion that's coming, that we've talked about on this channel, is because we've taken pride in our military, and we've taken pride in our strength as a people, and he's going to show us that we're not, okay, that we're not strong. And there's other things, like the slavery that a lot of Americans will be sold into. That's a specific judgment for many that's been seen. In the end, it's going to be hard, but we're going to see that there's a protection for those of us that are abiding well in him. So let's get to that. But just this picture of most people mourning over the dollar, playing taps, is because they're losing their God. They loved the dollar more than they love God, and they're crying over it. It's interesting to me that it says that the dollar bill, the $100 bill, started burning at a corner, and then it burned until it was a third of the way gone. I mean, 2/3 of the way gone, a third of it was left. That matches the Chris Reed dream that I did an interpretation of, where he also saw a point with certain headlines where 2/3 of the $50 bill had been torn off. And the headlines associated with that were associated with a two-state solution for Israel. Maybe that's the event of the second and third week of October. Maybe it's the two-state solution for Israel. Not sure. But the timing, in the Chris Reed dream, it would seem that the dollar being reduced by 2/3 corresponded roughly to October, and now we're seeing that repeated here. Okay? And of course, there were some celebrating that the dollar had died. Those are the Antifa types, okay, and global elites that want the United States knocked down a notch. All right, let's go ahead and watch the next part.
And then I saw churches, small groups of people kneeling and praying. They were wrestling in prayer with the spirit of the age. But these people were protected by bubbles of safety. There were angels guarding them around, or guarding around them. And these were the faithful core of the church that had not been compromised in their values and their faith. They were being encouraged to stand strong. They were being encouraged to keep preaching, praying, believing. And there were relentless attacks against them. Just like the ones I saw in the September dream. There was just relentless attacks against them. But they stayed faithful. They were in the heat of the battle. They were praying. They were fighting. They were wrestling. Like I said, with the spirit of the age, but they were fighting to stay faithful. And they were very few in numbers, but that didn't bother them. And I saw behind each of these people praying, I saw a small gate. And I was reminded of Matthew 7, 13 and 14. Enter by the narrow gate. Enter by the small road. They never stood up, even though they'd walked through that gate. They were right there beside it.
Then he saw small churches, small groups of people praying and wrestling with the spirit of the age. It doesn't mean that there won't be members from big churches also doing this. It means the small is to show that it's a remnant. It's not the majority of Christians that will be doing this. It'll be a remnant. A small number of Christians will be doing this. Why? Because this is probably after the shaking of the church, and there's not a lot of Christians who remain. But these are the faithful Christians. These are the ones that have not been compromised. He called them the faithful core of the church. They're still abiding in Christ and following him well. And they were being encouraged to stand strong, to keep preaching, to keep praying, to keep believing. But they're protected by bubbles of safety. Angels were guarding them. So let's have faith. Let's trust that when we get to this part, that we, the faithful core of here, if you are faithful and abiding in Christ, you're going to be protected. So many of the dreams have seen this. Trust it. Trust God. Trust God in that. Relentless attacks against them. But they stayed faithful, praying and fighting. There were very few in numbers, but it didn't bother them. Okay, it says behind each of these people was a small gate. He was reminded of Matthew where Jesus said, enter by the narrow gate. They never stood up even right beside the gate. So they had not entered the narrow gate, meaning they weren't entering heaven yet. They were still working on earth. But the narrow gate was right there by them. So they will enter it at some point. It is theirs. It's there by them. They're choosing that path, but they're trying to work while they're here.
Then I saw puffed up pastors and I saw puffed up prophets. Very expensive suits. And they were preaching against the idea of persecution coming. They promised prosperity. They promised health and wealth and only good things. And they spoke like their words, as they spoke, their words were like they were slurred, like they were drunk. And suddenly their clothes were coming off. Their tie was loosened and taken off. Their shirt was taken off. Pretty soon they were standing there completely naked. saw this rug pulled out from underneath them, and they go flying up in the air. They're trying to cover their modesty while they're up in the air. But as they were floating in the air, I saw money flying out. I saw money flying out from them. All the money that they'd gotten from all the prophecies and ministries and things they'd done selfishly. I saw that money just kind of flying. But when they landed on the ground, this is another thing that just really got me. When they landed on the ground, all of them that landed on the ground that were all puffed up bit through their tongues as they landed. And pieces of those tongues went flying. And they were trying to reach out to grab them, but they were beyond their reach. I was reminded of the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. They were exposed. And then the scene went back to those that were praying, and the warfare was still tense, but the present strength was obvious in those that were praying. And then...
Okay, then he saw puffed up pastors and prophets. They were in very expensive suits, preaching against the idea of persecution, promised prosperity, and health and wealth, and only good things. So these are, name it and claim it, health and wealth, prosperity gospel teachers, and they're preaching against persecution. So, who are they? Well, I could name some. You'd probably know some of their names. You might not know others. But even if we name the big ones, there's lots of little ones around you that may be preaching the same thing. So how do you know, what are they puffed up with? What puffed up? It means prideful, egocentric, ego-filled. Pastors and prophets. Pastors and prophets. Just because you see somebody on TV, on TBN, or they're the leader of a mega church, or they've got a big following, everybody thinks they're spirit-filled, doesn't mean Jesus knows them. He may even be speaking true prophecy through them. This is the key. Just because somebody says something prophetic and it comes true doesn't make them one of Jesus's servants. He does speak prophecy and truth through people that don't belong to him. And they themselves are very confused then, because they think this prophecy coming through them is evidence that he loves them and is honoring them. But he's not. You can see an example of this with Caiaphas, the high priest, who said in the Gospels to the Sanhedrin about Jesus, he said, "Don't you know that it's better for one man to die for the sins of Israel, for all of Israel, in the place of Israel?" That was prophetic. It was true, but it was the enemy of God saying it. Caiaphas, the high priest that wanted Jesus crucified. His motivation was bad. And so be very careful. So how do you know? How do you know? Well, one, if you see expensive suits, that's a red flag. Is that a definite cross the mountain? No, not by itself. It's okay if a Christian wants to dress nice. But that's a red flag, and a lot of us see them driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis and yachts and stuff. Okay, now more and more red flags. Doesn't seem like a pastor focused on a ministry, but again, not judging them just on that. But if you see them preaching against persecution, saying persecution's not going to happen, we're going to be blessed, we're going to move into this time of a great harvest, of a great provision of God. If you hear that, stay away. Turn them off. They're not speaking God's message. And as they spoke, they slurred words like a drunk. So they're drunk. They're drunk with their own pride. They're drunk with their own power. They're not speaking coherently. The things they're saying don't make sense. And I've heard pastors like this, especially in prophets recently, saying these kind of things. And the things they say, it sounds random. It doesn't sound like there's power in it. It sounds incoherent in a way of their logic and their reasoning. It says, suddenly their clothes began coming off. Ties, shirt, pretty soon they were standing there completely naked. They are being exposed. What did God ask Coverstone and the church to pray for in September? He said, pray for corruption in the church to be exposed. So now they are being exposed. The prayer is being answered. Eventually, the rug, and what do clothes represent? Clothes represents works, our works. So their works are being removed so we can see the person underneath, and we see they actually didn't have any good works. They're naked and sinful. This is corruption being exposed. And of course, great embarrassment for them. The rug was pulled out from under them. I don't have to translate that. You understand? Something happened, at some point it's like, whoop, all of them lose their standing. They lose their standing. They lose their ability to stand. They went flying into the air, out of control. They tried to cover their modesty, tried to cover up, tried to, protect themselves from being exposed, but very futile. Their little efforts are futile. They're naked and they're flying through the air. Okay. Money went flying out from them. This was money received from prophecies, from all this, ministry they've done. They've had people sending in money, and they've gotten rich off of it. Rather than send it to missions around the world, they have used it for themselves. But guess what? When you have a big salary, you have big expenses. You make your expenses match your income. So, these guys that have these mansions and these jet planes and other things, they've got payments to pay. They have to keep them coming, and they have to keep the cash coming in. So when their sins are exposed, people are going to stop giving. People will leave their church. Tithes will stop. Their elders may even abandon them. Their audience will abandon them. They're going to lose income very quickly. And yet their payments, their lifestyle still has to be funded, and they won't have the funds to do it. So money is coming flying out of them, and they're being drained, they're being impoverished. So God is using them as examples to show everybody visibly through their own life, through this puffed up pastor's own life, or prophet's own life, that what they were preaching was false, because they preached prosperity and now they're poor. So there's no way to see that happen. There's no way to see a prosperity gospel pastor become poor and believe that any part of what he was saying was true, because he's either, if what he was saying is true, then what has happened now is he must be in sin, because he's no longer prosperous, now he's poor. And they were teaching that if you're poor, it's because you didn't have enough faith. So what happened to you, pastor? Do you no longer have faith? Why are you poor now? He can't answer without negating everything he taught before. Either way, he's proven false. And that is why when they landed on the ground, they bit through their tongues. They can't speak anymore. What are they going to say? They bit through their tongues. They lost their ability to speak. He references the emperor's new clothes. He references they were exposed. But they bit through the tongues. They tried to grab it. They tried to grab after their ability to speak. But they couldn't. Because what are they going to say? Are they going to say, yes, I'm poor now, but, So I was saying before that if you're poor, it's because you don't have enough faith. I just had to believe. But I'm poor now, but you should still listen to me. Because I do have faith. But then, so, what are they going to say? They're going to have nothing to say. Nothing at all. The scene went back to those who were praying, and there was new strength in those who were praying. So the faithful core of the church will grow even stronger as the false pastors and prophets are exposed. Again, why? For clarity. Jesus wants the church of the last age to be clear. He wants everybody to know who belongs to Jesus, and who's been faking it. He's dividing the sheep from the goats. He's dividing the wheat from the tares. It is time to reveal it. Those who are faithful will become new and strong, stronger than ever before. And they won't be teaching prosperity gospel. They'll be teaching obedience and faithfulness. Let's watch the next part.
Praying. And then it switched to one last scene. I saw clowns in suits, like circus clowns. And they were pouring buckets of oil and grease on the ground in front of election venues. And the sign said, elections so many days away, weeks away, weeks away. But these clowns were dancing and acting like clowns. They were juggling. And there were people trying to get to vote, but they were slipping. They were sliding past the doors, and they couldn't get in to vote. And the clowns were actually trying to distract these people from doing what they were supposed to do. And they were doing it in a professional way. They were juggling, but they were doing skits. But the skits were sinister, and they were abusive. And they watched anybody approaching the ballot, not the ballot box, but approaching the venue, the building where they were going to vote. They looked at them with suspicion and angst. They were doing everything they could to keep people from voting. They were trying to distract them from what was going on.
So he saw clowns in suits. This is one of the most curious things. When I first saw that, I was like, what? Clowns in suits. And they were pouring buckets of oil and grease in front of election venues. Signs said elections are this many weeks away. The clowns were dancing and acting and juggling. They were basically doing all kinds of skits. He said the skits they were doing were sinister and abusive. But ultimately what they're trying to do is distract people so they don't vote. And or intimidate them so they don't vote. And this scene does seem to tie it to this month. Like, it does seem to very much tie it to right before the election. And you could have argued this was before the 2020 election, this happened some, but I don't really feel like it did in the biggest way. I do foresee it happening before this one. If not, it just means that it's not time yet, that this will be at some election in the future, okay? Because I do believe this is from God. But I do notice something is that the other day, it's probably 2 weeks ago or so, I don't remember, whenever they first announced that lady that was going to run, I believe her name was Nina Jankovic. I can't pronounce her last name. I haven't even studied it to try. But yes, her. So if you probably have seen her, and she did a video. She was appointed to be the head of the new government disinformation board, i.e. Ministry of Truth. Okay, that was part of the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security established this board to monitor disinformation on social media and elsewhere in our elections, etc., to help us understand what's true and what's not. And but in this video she'd posted on Twitter, you saw it, she had this bright red lipstick and she was singing show tunes and singing about disinformation with a modified song from Mary Poppins. And at the end, she said, "Just call me the Mary Poppins of disinformation." And as soon as it stopped, I just saw this bright red lipstick, and I'm hearing the song still in my head. I'm like, clowns in suits. Clowns in suits. She's a clown in a suit. She's very professional. It's a sinister, it's crazy, but it reminded me of a clown. I even sent it to my friend. I said, hey, look at this, clown in a suit. And then the next day or 2 days later, Breitbart.com had another article about her and something she'd said, and the headline said, Clown World. Clown World. And every time since then, Breitbart has put a picture of her saying something, they put clown emojis next to it. So I was like, wow, that really is this. So I don't think we're seeing this in a big way yet. I think we're going to see this in September, October. Before the election, before the midterms, there's going to be clowns in suits. They won't have clown makeup, but you'll recognize them. They're going to be saying all kinds of crazy things. Dancing, juggling. They're probably going to try to put all kinds of Johnny Depp, Amber Heard stories in the news to distract us, to keep people from voting. But they're also going to be weaving sinister skits about election fraud and how it's the Republicans this time stealing the election. and with all of their election integrity laws and all kinds of other things, and everything they've said about 2,000 mules and all of these things, that's all disinformation. This is what you're going to hear. And you would think, why would they be willing to discourage everybody from voting? Well, because ultimately they think with fake mail-in ballots and other things, they can account for any lost votes on one side of the aisle, but they really don't want Republicans voting because they can only do so much fraud, and so they need to depress the Republican vote to accomplish it. And that's why they're like watching, these clowns in suits are watching anybody approaching the election venue with suspicion and angst. And they were doing anything they could to keep people from voting. All right. So I haven't really seen, well, I think this lady was the first. And I know she's been canceled for now. We'll see what happens. I think she'll come back, or others will come back, or she'll come back in a different role. Maybe not part of the Department of Homeland Security. Don't know. But I think we're going to see this a lot more in the fall. All right. All right, let's watch the last part of this video.
And then I saw this big billboard. And it said, Passover 2021. Big things are coming for the world. Big things are coming for the world. And that white figure appeared. And he said, do not stop bracing, for the storm will not pass until I stop the storm. So brace, brace, brace yourselves. And don't look back.
Then I saw this big billboard, and it said, Passover 2021, big things are coming for the world. And this is what seemed to cement this originally as being October of 2020. Because, well, it's the date, Passover 2021. So initially we thought big things were going to really happen that March. I know I was thinking that. Why wouldn't we with that headline? Especially if this is from God. But Passover 2021, Passover is really the beginning of the Jewish, it's a Jewish year. I believe it's the religious year that starts in Passover. Rosh Hashanah is the secular Jewish New Year. I might have that backwards, but I think that's right. Regardless, for God, a lot of things kind of start in Passover. And I think he was just doing what he does, which is he gave this in this order so that we would take it seriously in 2020. Like if we knew this wasn't going to be for 2022, we wouldn't have gotten prepared. And he wanted us to take it serious early so we can have time to get prepared and time to seek him and grow and learn. So he did it this way to make us think, I believe, that most of it was happening in 2020. But in reality, when you start paying attention to the details, you realize he didn't commit to that. He didn't say that clearly. And in this case, Passover 2021, all it says is big things are coming for the world. Well, have big things been developing since then? Passover 2020, March 2021. That's when the vaccines really started rolling out. Then came the mandates, people losing their jobs, on and on. Russia started rattling a saber. Now they've invaded Ukraine. It's building, right? But big things did really begin. You can say, well, big thing already happened with coronavirus. Okay, sure. But he already gave a dream about that. So this was alerting, saying more big things are coming in 2021. And I do think we're seeing more and more things unveil. They said the white figure appeared, and he said, and this is the Christ figure. So I believe this is Jesus speaking. And he said, do not stop bracing, for the storm will not pass until I stop the storm. So brace, brace, brace yourselves and don't look back. So, in a sense, from political firestorms like the January 6th attack on the Capitol, etc., riot in the Capitol. A better way to say it, not attack, riot. Since then, politically speaking, it's been contentious, but you could say that it feels like there's a growing storm, but the storm didn't end then. And this is what he's saying. He's saying, do not stop bracing, for the storm will not pass until I make it pass, until I stop the storm. So we're definitely still in the storm. Things are just increasing. We've got the fitful wind blowing, these pre-storm winds blowing, telling us more things are coming. Very clearly expecting food shortages. That's in the news everywhere. The baby formula shortage is one more of those things. But he says again, brace, brace, brace yourselves and don't look back. Brace, brace, brace. I got 3 braces, 3 taps of the calendar, 3 years. That's my best interpretation right now, that this year we're still bracing. Next year's when it gets really bad. So we're bracing now, and that's why it's been a while. I mean, coronavirus, 2021, 2022 now. And that's why he's saying, do not stop bracing, for the storm will not pass until I stop the storm. And don't look back. Don't look back, because we're moving forward to the millennial kingdom with him, to the second coming with him. Don't look back to the old country, to the old United States, to the way things used to be. We don't need it anymore. We need what's coming. We need the millennial kingdom. We need that. That's a new joyful place that is coming. And we're going to be there soon. We're going to get there. So let's look forward and not back. Anyways, that is my interpretation of the October dream. I see, in general, I would say I was struggling more. I was trying to guess at how this would play out in 2020. Now, going into 2022, going into midterms, I feel like it makes perfect sense. I see it now. And I couldn't see it so easy then. And that to me is further confirmation that we're building up to something. So keep busy, keep seeking him. Seek him with all your might, with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. And help bring your neighbors peace. You know, teach them in the basic habits. Spread the gospel. Bring your neighbors to Christ. Teach them about the 3 foundational habits of prayer, Bible reading, and fellowship, and how important that is. Make sure you're in community, and God will be with you. Enjoy the day. For now, guess what? Right now it's May, and things are okay, and the sun is shining in the sky, and it's beautiful out here. And I pray you can enjoy the birds and the breeze and everything else where you are too. So have a great day, and see you soon.